just because I mean you're going for it, so I'll let you go. Go for it.
Sorry.
No. You go for it.
I'm just like the chattiest person on the planet. So it's like if you get me talking, I just won't shut up.
Listen, that's fine. Like I'm very, very introverted, like as like my normal persona. And usually I just like conversations to just flow. I'm not someone who's gonna interview you. I'm not the BBC or CNN, like let's just fucking have a conversation and have a coffee and like have a good day, So you crack on.
I feel that. So I was doing the whole like 21 day fix thing, and they had their diet plan, and it was like you got 3 little protein containers, you got 2 carb containers, and then I think you got 4 fruit and 4 veggies, and then
Oh,
like
fat?
1 little container for like fats, so like
Jesus.
oils or nut butters or whatever. So all in all, I think if you like did the math, it would be like a 1,200 calorie diet. And the thing about me is that I'm a big perfectionist. And so it was like I needed to be perfect. I needed to abide by that consistently. And at that point, I was probably in like 10th grade. So I was 15 turning 16, and I ran winter track that year. Granted, I am not a runner. I am not a track star. They put me in hurdles because they saw my legs and they were like, you look like you can jump. And I was like, this is a very bold assumption we're making. I did not do well at hurdles. I think I only fell once, but I was also like, if you can imagine me like running really, really tentatively up to the hurdle and then like just jumping over it and then continue, like I never built enough momentum to be exciting out of fear that I would fall. So I just sucked. I just straight up was awful. But, it was a lot of running. So I'm eating this like this tiny amount of food and I'm doing all this running, and I got shredded, like absolutely peeled. I had very little muscle mass at this point because I had only been like using weights for training for probably like 5 months prior to this. And I stopped doing all of that once I started running track because I just exchanged one exercise for a different one. Mm-hmm. And I had like a 6-pack. I had like these tiny little like string bean lean arms. And I remember still being exceptionally unsatisfied with my body. Like I was that lean that I really wanted, but it still didn't feel like me. Like I was like, this isn't, like I'm not comfortable like this. And, once the track season ended, I considered doing spring track, but then I thought about how slow I was and I was like, maybe I'll spare myself. So I decided not to do spring track. And that's when I picked up the 21 day fix thing pretty hardcore. And I put on size pretty quick, and I'll attribute that halfway to genetics and halfway to noob gains. But I put on mass relatively quickly. I went from sitting at like 125 to sitting around like 137, 138, in about, I want to say like 6 months. It's probably about how long it took me to get there.
That's pounds.
And then after I got bored of 21 Day Fix, I exchanged that for a program called like Crush 60, which I think they rebranded to be Crush Fit, and now is a thing that does not exist at all. They like the owner of that company like disappeared into the woodworks, and no one's heard from him since, I don't think.
Like,
But that was a
remember,
big part of my like, that's my big part of like getting into the gym is those are my first like true barbell movements, which is crazy to me because I started that in 2015, and I remember because this is like right after I got a smartphone, because my parents were pretty much like, you don't need an iPhone because you're 12, even though there were other like 12-year-olds in my grade that had iPhones. My parents were like, you're 12. What the fuck do you need access to the internet at all times for? The answer was that I didn't. So I didn't get an iPhone until I was in like 10th grade. And that's a total side tangent. But the point is, I didn't know how to get it on my phone. So I printed it out, hard copy version, and I wrote the start date on the top of the packet, and I carried that packet with me from 2015 until I went to college in 2017. I don't know where it is now. It's probably honestly somewhere in my basement at this point, but Yeah, so I carried that printout copy with me everywhere. And I think I started, it was like July something, 2015. And that was my first introduction to barbell movements. And I did that for a while. And then I got really into Nikki Blackketter and Auburn Nutter and all of those like fitness girls. And then I wanted to look like them. So I got into the gym and I was like, I'm going to do these a billion sets of 15 cable bicep curls with 10 pounds because I don't want to lift heavy and be big, but I want to lift something so I can look like that. And again, I found myself in a position where I had obtained a physique that like was technically on paper what I wanted, but I never felt satisfied with it. And my freshman year of college, I was pretty prone to partying. So I put on a decent amount of weight from going out all the time, which wasn't great. I was walking back from a frat party after like chugging an entire like half box of wine. And I'm wearing like a backless bodysuit, black skinny jeans. I got knee-high boot heels on. And I'm stumbling across campus trying to go back to my fucking dorm room. A policeman comes up to me. I'm like 18. And he's like, ma'am, have you been drinking? And I went, I'm sick. Because that was a lie that anyone would believe, right? That me dressed up, smoky eye, stumbling out at 1:00 in the morning, I'm ill. Yes. I mean, I was ill. I did throw up later that evening. But my friend, like, so like, she like jumped in. She was like, I'm taking her home right now. I'm taking her home right now. And he was like, y'all get home safe. And I was spared. God looked down on me and he said, this one time,
you get a pass.
Don't do this again.
Yeah.
So anyways, another side tangent, but yeah, so that was my life freshman year of college. And, you know, I did my fair amount of going out too when I was in high school. So I was pretty much partied out by the time I finished.
What's the penalty for like drinking under 21? Because it's obviously 21 over there, right? And everywhere else, like where I've lived, has been 18.
It depends on like who catches you. If that like, if I got caught in a dorm room drinking, I would have gotten like written up. There's a term for it. I was an RA my sophomore year of college, so I should remember what it's called. A CR, conduct referral. You'd get a conduct referral if you were caught drinking in a dorm, and then you'd have to go to like a hearing, and then they put you on like probation or something, you know, depending on what had happened. And you'd have to like attend like an alcohol education course or something similar to that. If you got caught by the popo, they took you to jail for the evening and they made you sleep there, and then they let you out in the morning and they said, don't be an idiot. But I think that went on your record, like as a student. I don't think that it would go on your record as like a citizen of the United States, but as a student, like that would follow you. But most campus police, like, because everyone parties in college, like that's not a secret. So most of them, so long as you had somebody with you that was clearly like of a more sober mind than you were, and that was, you know, able to get you from point A to point B, they let you go. They were like, just go home. Like this run-in has probably scared the fuck out of you. So just go home and go to bed. And so I'm really thankful for that. Really thankful for that because yeah, things could have not gone great for me in that moment.
Yeah, like it's really interesting for me. Like I don't understand why it'd be 21 when everyone is clearly on the fact of, okay, everyone drinks, you know, at 18. Like if you can go to college and vote and drive a car and, you know, have sex and buy fucking cigarettes, I don't understand why. But hey, that's a, you know, it's different societies, right? Different nations. I can't comment unless I've lived there, and I haven't lived there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely bizarre because pretty much in the States, at least from my personal experience, most of my cohort was drinking and partying by the time we were 16. So it's really like, I mean, it is what it is. The law is the law.
Mm-hmm.
I
For
don't
sure.
understand why, because I think that it's understood by almost everybody that nobody actually waits until they're 21 to start drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress, you know. My policy when I was an RA, so normally if you're an RA and you catch your kids drinking, you gotta write them up, you gotta do this, that, and the other. My thing is that, and my parents raised me the same way, which I think is why I was like this with the girls on my hall, is that it's like, if you're getting into shady shit or you're potentially getting into trouble, like I'd rather know where you are and what's going on and then
Yeah.
be able to help than you feel like you need to sneak around and not come to me when you actually need it. So like girls would come and knock on my door at like midnight to 2 in the morning, like that window of time. And they'd like crash on my bed and I'd just give them snacks and water until they were good enough to like go back to their own room. But it was like, I wanted to be that place to where it's like, if you were up Shit's Creek and you felt like you couldn't talk to anybody or like call the police or whatever, like I wanted them to come to me so I could make that call,
Mm-hmm.
you know, without them feeling that pressure. Like they didn't want to be the bad guy. They didn't know what to do. So I was like, come to me. I'll see if I can figure it out. And if I can't, then I'll do what I can to like spare you guys the getting in trouble, you know, and we'll go from there. Cause it's like so many people end up seriously injured or sick because nobody wants to be that person who calls the cops or calls an ambulance. When someone has like alcohol poisoning and they're dying on the bathroom floor, it's like, we should call an ambulance at that point, you know? But because and that's why I hate the fear culture, is that it's like, it really makes it difficult to do the right thing sometimes because you're so terrified of getting in trouble and it fucking up your life that it's you have to make that decision, the mark on your future or someone else's safety. And you know, that's, it's not an easy call to make, and it's a selfish position to be put in, but it's still, nonetheless, it's not an easy decision to make. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. It's a stigma attached to it, right? But it's like at the end of the day, like you're doing the right thing, but it's like, oh, you're in that position anyway. It's like, oh, granted, but we're now in a really, like you said, up shit's creek. Like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna try and cover it up, and things are gonna get worse. So we're gonna make a decision to help someone who needs help. You know, like
Yeah. And so by having that open relationship with the girls on my floor, like it's a little less pressure to be the one to make that call if they could ask me to make it instead. Do you know
mm,
what I mean?
mm,
So that was really important to me and still continues to be important to me, you know, that the people in my life see me as somebody who's willing to make difficult calls with only the intention of like everybody's well-being. And like that's something that I take very seriously and I find to be very important to me, is that like unbiasedness in my relationships. Like if someone asks me for advice, I don't want to give them advice that comes from me as their friend. You know, it's like I'm going to give you advice that I'd want someone to give me that I think is like more encompassing of the entire situation from all viewpoints. And again, like that's way easier said than done. And of course, I'm subject to being partial towards people. I think we all are. But
mm.
it's always my aim to be unbiased and to give somebody like quality advice in a situation. Because God forbid, you know, my bias impact that situation and then they take what I say and then they do it and then it's bad. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Mm. There's a lot of weight on
So
your shoulders, though.
yeah, well, I mean, I have a small friend group, which I guess is the trade-off there. So I
Yeah,
have a very small friend group.
I, I understand that totally.
Yeah, I have my boyfriend and then like 5 other people that I would call like really true good friends of mine.
Hmm.
I have a bunch of acquaintances and people that I'm friendly with,
Hmm.
but in terms of people that like I would ask for and would give very important life advice to, it's a very small group.
Hmm.
And most of them I've known. I think the shortest lifespan of a relationship that I have within my friend group is probably like a year and a half.
Mm.
So I've known these people for an exceptionally long time. which I'm super thankful for, because I feel like not very many people can say that, they've been friends with the same person for 6 years, because a lot of relationships in today's day and age, at least, are pretty fickle. They're very on and off things. They're not super consistent or reliable, which is frustrating when you're trying to make a new friend and people have this sense of temporariness about relationships that shouldn't exist. Like, people have this understanding, especially with romantic relationships, where it's like they're your person, so they're going to understand everything about you. And if they don't like something about you or they disagree, like, they're not your person and you should end that relationship and walk away from it, whether it's romantic or friendship, but like specifically romantic. And I said that most of the people that I've been friends with, I've been friends with for a very long time. There's only one person in that group that I've not had a massive fight with. Like, the people that I am exceptionally close with, of course we butt heads. Like, we're different people with different opinions, and that's why we're friends. And shit happens, and sometimes they do something wrong, sometimes I do something wrong. Nobody's absolved of fault. Like, we're all capable of making mistakes and doing things wrong. But the most important thing, I think, in relationships and them being successful and long lasting is having the capacity to step back and analyze the situation again from an unbiased point of view and being like, where did I go wrong? Was my response valid? Was it necessary? And then considering your actions, your words, your thoughts, their actions, their words and thoughts, and then being willing to put your pride aside and extend that olive branch and say, hey, I know this happened. I apologize for the role that I played in it. I care very, very much about you, and I would love to continue being friends if you're willing to rebuild that bridge with me. And it's totally up to somebody else to either say, yes, I'd love to rebuild this bridge with you, or no, fuck off, disrespectfully, and that's their call to make. But the only reason that I have these fantastic friends that I do now is because either me or they have been willing to say, hey, I was in the wrong here, or I don't like what happened. Can we talk about it? Can we work something out? And, that's so invaluable, because that level of communication and humility that comes from being able to step back and rekindle a relationship, because pride, I think, is what keeps people away from great things pretty often. We're all capable of being wrong. No one's right all the time. I'm probably wrong more frequently than I'm willing to admit, but if someone calls me out and they're like, you're wrong, and here's X, Y, and Z, I'm like, you're right, I was wrong. Like, that's my bad. I'll be better next time. Because, and that's the thing too about life, is that we're always growing, we're always learning. And as soon as you stop growing and learning, like, you start to die. And that sounds kind of macabre and fucked up, but like, it's true. Once you get so set in your ways that nobody can tell you it's something different, like, what are you doing anymore? You're just waking up and existing, doing your laundry and going to bed, You're not learning anymore. You're not expanding your horizons. So I love to hear people out as much as I love to talk, like, I love for people to chat my ears off too, so I can like learn things about people and learn, new perspectives. And, I'm not a very religious person. I was raised Catholic, but I'm not a very religious person now. Because Catholicism as a child and that whole like society gets to be very not great. And Catholicism as a faith is fantastic. Like, I personally would still identify myself as Catholic, all like not practicing, but I'd still call myself Catholic. But, and I mean, the community just isn't great all the time. Just always lots of extremes, and if you don't fit it, it's not great for you. But I've found myself in the realm of like the spiritual as of lately, in terms of like crystals and tarot and things like that. And it's not necessarily because I buy it and I'm like, I believe in this, but it's a lot like, I want to learn, because it's something that was very like, you didn't talk about it. Like, tarot was for the devil, like crystals or rocks, like whatever. And I mean, while that may be true, to some people. I think it's pretty cool. And I'd like to learn about it. So I have friends who are really into like the whole metaphysical stuff. So I pick their brains about it all the time. I'm like, what does this crystal do? What does that do? Like, like tell me about astrology. What's a rising? What's a Venus? You know, like what are all these houses? What are transits? Because like, why the fuck not? Who's it gonna hurt by knowing these things? I find it fascinating personally, but again, I digress.
No, I relate to that real hard. Like I grew up with just my mum, and she's very spiritual. Would go to like a spiritualist church, and still practices. And she was born in Nigeria, right? So she's West African. And honestly, she'll say shit and it will come true. It's fucking freaky. Like I've never met someone that can predict the future like me mum, which is kind of cool, but also fucking scary as hell.
Fair.
But she'd always kind of sprinkle some nuggets in the whole spirituality growing up and being a kid. I don't know if it was the place I grew up in, being a young male, or just being a fucking immature mind. You just kind of, I don't know, it always used to freak me out because I used to see the truth in it. I used to actually see it like working, and that used to freak me out. So, I was like, no, I'm going to take a rain check on this one. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm here if you want to talk about it. If not, don't worry about it. And it's funny you say you've kind of dove into that a little bit more, because I've done exactly the same thing for the past, I don't know, maybe 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. How long have I been here? No, about a year and a half. Like I've been over in New Zealand, so I was like, oh well, I'm on my own, traveling a beautiful country, spending a lot of time on my own, out of cities. I'm gonna start doing this thing, start like kind of diving into it, having conversations, and it's beautiful. Like you learn things, that you learn perspective that you would never see before. We can take a look at something and see exactly the same thing, or the same object is in front of us, but we could see something completely different. And I think that is fucking fascinating, and being able to hear people's stories behind it, and why too. Like I'm always in the question of like why, like why do you think that? Why do you think like that? Why do you feel like that? Like, what's the reason behind you being in Virginia? What's the reason behind like you taking this? Because people's like experiences ends up shaping them, and then like I always think, well, I'm kind of blessed with a poor memory, right? And also I'm not the most academically smart individual, and I think that's a blessing because I know I'm not the smartest of people. So I'm like, okay, well, if I know that, then I'm going to ask more questions and I'm going to have more conversations with people, and I'm going to wonder why, I'll be like, I'm also a writer too. So I do a lot of that shit where I'll sit down or, sit on a rock and be like, why are we here? That all that type of like weird philosophical stoic type shit. But it also grants me the ability to talk to people, like and be like, how do you feel? Like what do you think of this? And like people who are super involved with the Catholic Church, Christian Church, Islam, Buddhism, nothing like I'm fascinated, and especially travels like opened my eyes and been like, holy shit, like the more you travel, the more you realize the differences that we have created and the lines we have drawn in the sand are actually bullshit. Like we're all the same.
No,
Like
that is straight up the truth.
for sure. Like I'll
Yeah.
speak to someone like I remember I was at a Christmas party, right? The Christmas just gone. So what are we? Are we July? We are July. Yeah, so like 7 months ago. And I really related and got talking to this guy from Samoa, right? So this little island in the Southeast Pacific. And I'm from the northwest of England, right? In Manchester. And I'm like, well, there couldn't be any more difference. First of all, he's like 6'5". I'm 5'10", right? On a good day. Okay. If I've not squatted and it's fucking shrunk me. I'm also as white as they come, right? I can't wear white because I blend in. I'm camouflaged. All right. And he's clearly not white. And then the cultural differences too. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like people would look like society or whatever would look at that and be like, these two individuals are polar opposites. and we sit down, we share a beer, and we get chatting and tell some stories. He tells me some stories of growing up in Samoa. I tell some stories about growing up in Manchester. It's the fucking same, mate.
Mm-hmm.
Like the positives, the negatives, the shit you still struggle with, the things you've learned along the way. It's exactly the same.
The human experience is so shareable.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's going to fall in love, everyone's going to have their heart broken. Like, the things that we feel are really universal, and the opportunities that we have to feel them, like those situations can be different. It's like, if I get my heart broken by some guy, when I was like 12, and it like changed my life forever, and someone else gets heartbroken by some chick when they're like 26 and it changed their life forever. Like, that feeling, although different, like, is also kind of the same. Like, that heartbreak and hurt still, like, it's as poignant for me as it is for them. And that's an experience that everyone gets to kind of have and share.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? And I say this to people all the time. I'm like, being a human being, like, the greatest gift, the greatest blessing that we're given is the capacity to feel things the way that we do. Because if I could be like the Jeff Bezos of the world, just like insanely rich, like flying a penis into space, like, if that could be me, but I felt nothing, I wouldn't want it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want it. Like, there is no part of me that would trade the capacity to feel things for any amount of tangible wealth.
There's nothing stronger, right? Like
Exactly.
the human emotion is the strongest thing ever imaginable, existed, or everything combined. And it's funny because we dive into like statistical analysis and all that, and we like to draw definitions, right? And being like, it's exactly this. It's why people find it hard to be religious, because it's faith, not fact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everything's like an assumption, right? Um, and I think I might have forgotten my point. Oh no. So life is I again, memory's not too great.
All
Life is
good.
a gray area. Like, it's there is no fucking definition. This bit in the middle, the up and down, like the tide coming in, the tide going out, the feeling of absolute euphoria, and then also complete sadness and fucking melancholy in between, is like that's living. That's the point. Being able to like pendulum between those things, and
Yeah.
that's what I'll end up fucking saying. Like I got a really close mate of mine, and he's just recently lost his mom. Right, he's like 21, 22, and I'm like, fuck, man, like, that's rough. That's rough, man.
Yeah.
But that does not mean like you are no longer living. This area right now, that's still life, man. Like, you've still been given a blessing and the best thing possible. Um, and it's strange. The combination, the synergy between good and bad, the yin and yang, the fucking devil and God, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? Heaven and hell, it's all the same shit. It's basically just creating a picture of life. And it touches on the point that you made, that you like to have conversations with people. I'm exactly the same. I like to listen to how people, mentally look at life, and you draw similarities from every corner of the world, and it's like, holy shit, we're all drawing the same picture, but we're just calling it different friggin' names.
It's like, I see blue and you see blue, but I might call blue purple and you might call blue green, but we're still seeing the same fucking color. You know what I mean? And I fall kind of into like a nihilist category of like attitude towards life, is that it's like, I feel very strongly like, if there's an afterlife, fantastic. I hope I'm a good enough person in this life in order to, get there. But if there's not, there's nothing I can do about it, and dreading it is going to make living the opportunity that I have right now miserable. So I'm like, you know what? I am going to do everything that I want to do. I'm going to see all the things I want to see. If there's a risk that I want to take, I'm going to take it, because, one day I'm going to die. And if there's something after this, great. And if there's not something after this, well, then shit. I didn't exist before I was born. I surely won't exist after, if there's, nothing after this.
Mhm.
And, there's no one, like, I'm going to have no capacity to regret potentially stupid things that I did.
Mhm.
The first time I went to the Arnold, a girl that went to the gym that I trained at in college hit me up like on a Tuesday. And she was like, me and this girl are leaving for the Arnold tomorrow. We have an extra seat in the car. Do you want to come? I had spoken to this girl for probably 30 minutes in my whole life, and I had never met her companion. But I said, absolutely, yes, I would love to go. And I got in this car with two complete strangers, and I drove 6 hours to Ohio, and I spent a weekend there. Because why the fuck not? I'm like, worst case scenario, they kill me. Best case scenario, I have a great time. And I had a great time. So, it works out. Calculated risks, of course. Like, please don't. If he looks like Ted Bundy, like, don't do it.
Yeah. Don't take candy from strangers.
Yeah, but calculated risks, and I've had such incredible experiences because I've given myself permission to make mistakes. And I have really bad anxiety, and I have since I was a kid. And for a really, really long time, that ruled me. It decided what I did, when I did, how much I thought about it. Like, I lost sleep because I was overthinking what I wore to school. And a lot of it was very centered around like my body image and how I saw myself, how I wanted others to perceive me. Which I guess is kind of how this ties into fitness, is that fashion and training and lifting like gave me some capacity to control those things that gave me a lot of anxiety. Like, I remember when I was in middle school, I was walking up to the bus stop one day, realized that I didn't like my outfit, and I turned around to go home and change, only to end up missing the bus. And I knew that I was going to do that when I turned around, but I could not stomach the thought of going to school dressed how I was and being okay with it. And it was very, very debilitating, and it's something that took a very long time to get over. But eventually, when I came around, and, now if I go out and I hate my outfit, I'm like, well, who cares? No one's going to remember what I wore today, tomorrow. Like, people are going to fucking forget. It doesn't matter. And one thing that I realized throughout that whole process is that I missed a lot of time in my life to be myself, to enjoy these experiences, to foster good relationships with people, because I was so busy hyper analyzing everything that I did, every word I said, everything I put on, everything I put in my body. Like, I wanted to be this person so badly, and I tore myself to bits because I wasn't that person and couldn't figure out how to become that person. So I wasted probably like 3 or 4 years of my life trying to fill this void that existed only because I thought that it did. And there was a period of time after that when I started to come around and started to see myself as a person worthy of love and respect, independent of change, where I regretted that time period that I had spent being so harsh on myself. Like, I would think about it and be like, think of all those relationships that you just absolutely shat on. Like, you wasted all that time, that valuable, precious time with somebody in your life. You're never going to get that back. And I'd beat myself up for it. And eventually I had the realization, I'm like, me regretting what's already been done is simply taking away my peace in this given moment. I am not going to go back and change what happened. But by spending my free time right now thinking about it and wishing it was different, I'm no better now than I was then. And so I have a very, very strong no regret policy within reason. Like, obviously, if you make a really awful decision, there should be at least a little bit of regret. Like, you should grow from that, learn from it. But things that I've done in the past that at that moment I understood to be the best course of action, I can't kick myself for it. I can't, because at that time I did what I thought was the right thing to do. I did what I knew in that moment to be, what needed to happen. And as I grew older and I learned things, obviously that began to change as I started to get this more holistic picture of who I am, of what was going on. I didn't even have a name for the feeling that I was feeling until I was in 10th grade and I was on the internet and I was like, oh shit, is this anxiety? The answer was yes. It's anxiety with a little hint of OCD, which is even better, and it was just like a shit show. But as soon as I was able to define it and be like, this is what I'm dealing with, you're not crazy. Like, there's a very real thing that's happening in your brain that's not your fault. I was able to step back and be like, I need to be better than what I've let myself be. And it's not going to be easy, because a lot of anxiety comes with like really shitty habits, like being very insecurely attached to people, like, and with OCD sort of stuff, like I used to not think that I locked the door, even though I knew I locked the door. So I'd turn around and come check that I locked the door like a couple of times, like things like that, that are very small. And like, granted, I don't even have like awful OCD. Like it's very, very, very small compared to people who have like severe OCD, but like, you still get those little bits of fragments that make you feel like you're kind of losing it a little bit. If that does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Where it's like, I know I locked the door. Why do I think I didn't lock the door? And then you got to go back and check and whatever. It's not great. And, having names for those things and being able to understand why they were happening to me and why I was feeling that way, and talking about it with a therapist who was able to be like, yes, this is what you're experiencing. This is how you're feeling. Like, there are words for this. This makes sense. You learn how to deal with it. You get like a plan, like a attack plan. Like it's you versus whatever's going on in your brain. And then it's like, you kind of have to make friends with it. You're like, it's always going to probably be a part of me. That's how my brain's wired, for better or for worse. So, you just begin to get good at explaining to people. You're like, hey, like, okay, so in my relationship, sometimes I feel like there's a problem, but I can't figure out what it is. And everything's fine. And I know that like logically in my head. So I've expressed to my partner, I'm like, hey, sometimes I might ask you, if there's something going on or if I'm imagining it. And I just need you to like confirm for me that it's not actually happening. And he was like, okay, I can do that. So if I'm ever stressed, I'm like, is there a problem or am I just anxious right now? And he's like, you're just anxious right now. Everything's fine. And so having that understanding and capacity to communicate those feelings to the people in my life makes this shit a lot easier to deal with. And it's not a super smooth spot to get to, because it requires also a lot of humility. So you got to be like, hey, this shit doesn't always do its job like it's supposed to. And so I've acquired these sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not, I can't think of the word, but these sort of like resources. That's not the word I'm looking for, but I think that's the general
strategies.
Yes, thank you. I developed these strategies to combat, whatever blockades exist in my brain, and also too with like mental health things. I feel like in relationships, there's a lot of times we put that burden of fixing us onto other people. And it shouldn't be that way. Like,
I
people
cannot
aren't there
fucking
to
agree with you any more than that.
They're not there to fix you. They're there to help you. And yeah. I'm getting to turn on my fan because I'm sweating.
All right, hold on. I need a pee. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right, go for it.
Yo.
Sorry, my boyfriend just texted me and he was like, he posted a video of him benching and he said that it was 485 and it's 419 and people in the comments are actually believing him, even though the plates are very easy to add up. So I'm just geeking about that. That's so funny. I don't even remember what we were talking about. I mean, I do, but I don't remember where I was in my word vomit process.
You're asking the wrong dude for the memory.
I know. We're both screwed now.
Oh, relationships, like open communication, yeah, like like someone being there to help you rather than being there to fix you is like,
yes,
that. Holy shit, that's kicked me in the throat. Like, that is literally absolutely pinpoint accurate. And I think that's probably a hurdle that most people fall at more often than not. And if I'm completely honest, in the past, I've definitely fell over that hurdle fucking I don't know how many times. And it just takes the humility to be able to like look yourself in the mirror, strip yourself down, that self-analysis, that critical thinking, and just be like, right, hold on. What am I? What's my positives? What's my negatives? What's my strengths and weaknesses? And then like also, how am I able to tell someone that and be okay with whatever answer they come up with, in the sense of, hey, this is my strength and weakness. I'm okay with it. All right, I'm just letting you know. So if I come across in a certain way, we can open up like an actual discussion and converse about it, rather than I'm just going to attack it with aggression, or you attack it with whatever people usually do, right?
Yeah. And I feel like partially because I relate to people and partially because like I try and be a friendly human being. People will come to me a lot of times with the things that are going on in their life and I'm always happy to be an ear to listen, but I'm never capable of doing the work for you. And when it comes to healing and working through a lot of, mental illness things, that's the work that has to happen on your own. Like that's weight you have to carry by yourself. And when I first realized that I had anxiety, I did not get that memo at all. I relied very heavily on my friends, and it wasn't great. I was looking to them to be like a voice of sanity, like a touch to reality when I like couldn't find it myself. And instead of communicating that that's what I needed from them, they felt like every time I had a problem, it was like I like word vomited my doomsday on them, when really what I needed then that I wasn't able to realize is that I was just looking for like a hand to hold on to while I was trying to find my way back to the surface. And now that, and therapy is a great thing. It really, really is. Like if you have a good therapist, it makes all the difference. And it took me until I was in college to end up in therapy. So I developed a vocabulary to be able to communicate these things to people. And when you don't have the access to mental health resources and you don't have access to therapy, like you don't have that set of tools to be able to communicate with people the things that you need because you don't understand. Like you don't know what you need. And it's a very isolating place to be. And so, once I developed those resources and those tools, now it's like if I'm having anxiety, I just tell somebody. I'm like, I'm having a very anxious day today. And they're like, okay, what do you think is causing you anxiety? And then I'll be like, I think it's X, Y, and Z. But as I talk about it, having gone through this, now for most of my life, they just let me talk. And I talk myself through it. And I've realized over this process, I'm a verbal thinker. Like I think out loud. Like that's just if I have a train of thought going, it's probably also coming out of my mouth because that helps me realize like inconsistencies, things that aren't like continuous, things like that. And it's like, okay, wait, So if 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4, 3 + 5 doesn't equal 7. And by talking about it out loud, especially with somebody else being there to just listen, like I can talk myself down from a lot of ledges.
Mhm.
And having the capacity to explain that that's what I need, and then finding the people in my life who are willing to just be there as a set of ears for like 20 or 30 minutes has been really invaluable for me, because it's given me room to express how I'm feeling, to have these thoughts, and to work through them in a productive way. So now I don't feel like I'm trapped by my brain. I'm like, my brain's feeling a little claustrophobic. Can I make some room right now? And my friends are like, of course, yes, absolutely, you can. I will call you in a couple minutes. And then we have a conversation, and then I feel better. But it's only because I had the resources to develop that vocabulary and that ability to communicate with people that I'm able to go through that process and make my peace and move on with my day. And so I think that the push for mental health awareness that's existed on social media and has been, making its way through is a really great thing, because as I was saying earlier, when I was on the internet, it was all like thinspo and pro Anna, and like if you're not skinny, you're wrong, and you want that does that cupcake taste as good as skinny feels?
Oh
And I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, fucking does. It tastes better, so fuck you for that. First of all, second of all, fuck you a second time. Fuck you squared.
Yeah.
Kindly. Um, so that's definitely changed, in terms of like pushing mental health, like that big push, um, which I think is a very excellent thing, like in terms of what the internet has been able to accomplish. So I'd say that's a positive, because
Mm.
it gives a lot of people who wouldn't have access to these resources access to these resources.
It's definitely opened my eyes up to it. Like I mentioned before, I'm very very introverted, and I've never had the access to any therapy or anything like that along the line, like back home. Like you go through the NHS and it'll take you fucking forever, or you go private and it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I grew up in a very blue collar family, and we didn't have two pennies to rub together. You know what I mean? So that's a no. And then also the challenge of a young male growing up with only a female around, like for whatever reason, you just think you're supposed to be this fucking absolute unit that can take the world on in one hand and fix everyone's problems in the other. So the internet's definitely opened my eyes to be like, holy shit, yeah, okay, like CBT is over here, and then we can kind of take a little bit of this and take a little bit of that. But for me, it's conversation, like just talking to people, and hearing people. Like, oh, that's the way they go cognitively when they start freaking out or they start experiencing X, Y, or Z. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And I see the benefit from the way they get out. So I'm going to try that and blah, 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 blah. And then also writing it down, man. Like you kind of put it into a medium, like it's then, it's either words, like we're having a conversation now, it's in this word format, and it'll go out and kind of manifest into the world, or you put it on a piece of paper and it's now like a physical thing like that. It's really important to get it out of your head, man.
Yeah. And I feel like when there are things of shame, like it's so much more difficult to express them, because that almost
Yeah.
makes it real.
Yeah.
But I feel like the only way to get over that is to express it. And, I've dealt with a lot of that, like with regret of losing that time in my life. Like I also felt ashamed for letting
Yeah.
my brain take that much power away from me. And it wasn't until I accepted the fact that some of the negative feelings I still had, were called shame, and being able to express that, yes, I feel ashamed because of this, that I was able to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we get so scared to face things, to look at things head on and be like, I need to feel this and to understand it and to have a name to call it by in order to let it go so it stops haunting me. And it's scary. It's fucking terrifying.
I mean, the first stage of
Because
the healing is to feel, right?
yeah, and so many people are scared of that. And I'm not excluded from that group, like my dog died in April. We had 3 dogs. We have 2 now. One of them died in April. That's still something that, like, I'm not ready to face and to deal with right now because I've got a billion other things going on, and it's like I'm going to get to it, but until I do, like, it's going to continue to hurt, like little moments. So it's a little prod, a little poke, and saying, hey, like, I'm still here. Like, you got to see this. Like, you gotta look at this. And there's a quote, I think it's from Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is like
Oh,
like primo 2012. And it's like it's the thing about pain is that it demands to be felt.
oof.
Which it's so true.
Beautiful.
It's so true. And that's for any emotion. Like, you can try and push it down and pretend like it doesn't exist. It's always going to bite you in the ass, whether it's now or a couple decades from now. Like, it's going to come out in one way or another because all of those things are going to manifest. So it's like you either feel it now and move on with your life, or you deny the fact that it exists and that it's going to haunt you until you do.
I mean,
And that's not an easy thing to wrap your head around and to understand. But I mean, it's the truth. Like, shit, like, you got to feel your feelings because they come from your brain, which means that unless you let them out, they're going to sit there,
yeah, man.
But
Genuinely. So I speak to a lot of young males, right? And I've coached a lot of like youth development programs along the way, and kind of made through that over the years. And you see it, right? And I've also felt it. Like, I look in their eyes, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I've been in that position. I know what you're fucking feeling. And a lot of people, I see now, right? I'm an observer. I'll sit back and I'll just observe what people are doing. And young men get castrated a lot. They get thrown to the fucking wall and shot at dawn simply because they fuck up a lot. And I'll be the first one to admit, yes, we fuck up a lot. We do a lot of failures because they hide every feeling, every emotion, and every painful experience through aggression, right? They just cover it up and just get super aggressive, which again causes more problems because that aggression is then inflicted on other people, which then causes more issues. However,
yeah,
how do you deal with that? Do you just like castrate the fellow and be like, well, you were aggressive, so now you're going to be institutionalized, or now you're going to be just cast out as just some asshole? I'm like, well, no, it's because they've not felt some pain that's hurt them. And it's being able to like turn around to young fellas and be like, why do you feel like that? Well, I
yeah,
don't know. Then that's okay. It's okay if you don't know. But what is your opinion on why you feel like that? Blah blah blah. And I don't know, man. Like, it's hard. Like, I see I just see it all the time. Like, it's just covered up by
yeah,
aggression because males are just super erratic. Like, just irrational brains. Like, you dangle a carrot in front of its fucking face, it's gonna run after it. You know what I mean? It's just the idiot side of the species. Like, that can create some fucking incredible things, but then also, like, if it's not kept between two fine lines, will just fucking destroy itself because it's kind of fun. Um,
yeah,
and it goes back to that feeling, like being, hey, it's okay to feel, like you're a young male, there's a stigma, just like you're a young female, there's a stigma. Fuck the stigma, man. Like,
I agree. I 100% agree. And the thing that I hate most, I think probably in the whole world, is the concept that, like, men shouldn't cry. I'm like, men absolutely should cry. Crying is a very human thing to do. I cry multiple times a week, sometimes randomly with no reason or cause. And people are like, why are you crying? I'm like, I don't know, it's happening. It's happening now. And that it's just an outlet for you to feel your feelings. And so to deny somebody the right to cry at the expense of their gender identity, like, you're not a man if you cry, you know, like, that's fucked up. It's fucked up, and it's denying somebody a very human outlet to express their emotions. And so if they feel like they can't cry, they feel like they can't express that sadness, that anger, that frustration through a very human response, you start to bottle it up. And like, what happens when you bottle up your feelings and you don't express them? You get aggressive. You get angry because you're not being heard. You don't understand what's going on because you've never been allowed to express it. No one's explained it to you beyond the fact that men don't feel feelings. Men aren't emotional. Women are emotional. Men aren't emotional. Like, and it's only to the detriment. Well, actually, I was going to say it's only to the detriment of men, but that's not even true. It's to the detriment of both genders, you know, probably, you know, non-negotiably, because if a man doesn't have the capacity to verbalize and articulate his feelings, the women in his life are always going to be at the end of some confusing string of responses that they have no way to dissect the origin of. Like, how can you help somebody who's angry over something that happened 10 years ago that they don't even know they're harboring anger towards still? Like, how do you help them? And the answer is you don't, because they haven't helped themselves yet. And you can't pick apart that puzzle unless somebody's willing to let you in to pick apart that puzzle. And that takes a lot of vulnerability. And vulnerability is only accessible when you're in tune with your emotions and you have the capacity to understand what's going on in your brain and why you're feeling things that you are. So it's to the detriment of everybody, you know, the narrative that men can't cry,
I think that's
or, you know,
absolutely beautiful.
being emotional makes you weak. It hurts everybody.
I
And
think the source of like every problem, quote unquote problem, painful, whatever, in the world is a hurting boy. I legitimately will stand up and fucking die on that hill. I'll be like, every problem in the world, if you go all the way back to the source, it originates from a young boy who is hurting over an emotion or a feeling that he is not willing to accept, and then covers it up.
I mean, if you think about Cain and Abel, like, if we're going all the way back, I mean, there you go.
Go for it. I
Do you
don't
know
know
the
that
story
story.
of Cain and Abel?
No.
So Cain kills Abel because, I think, and my biblical history is a little rusty, so if I'm incorrect, you know, and someone's listening to this, I hope that they correct me. But Cain kills Abel because God made some sort of acknowledgement that Abel was his favorite. And so out of jealousy, Cain kills Abel, and that like invents the sin of murder, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain. I know Cain kills Abel. It's just the details are a little fuzzy, but yeah, I mean, like, it's a jealousy thing. It was jealousy that made him kill his brother. And, you know, that's, again, men hurting in a way that they don't have the capacity to express or understand, and that resorts to physical violence. I feel like that's also another reason why, like, domestic abuse is a cycle. Like, if a dad beats mom and son watches dad beat mom, and son never has the ability to learn to express his feelings because he's always living in fear, when he ends up in a relationship, what's he gonna imitate? Dad beats mom, you know? Because it's like, you don't know any better, and you don't have the capacity to break out from that because you don't know any better. And it's truly one of the most tragic things that's happened to our species, as cognizant human beings, is that denial of men's ability to feel emotion and feminizing feelings. Like, the feminization of feelings is an inexcusable thing, because it reinforces gender norms, like, very, very harshly. And it's not good for anybody's mental health. Like, not a single person benefits from that. Not men, not women, not people who identify with no gender, not people who, you know, feel multiple genders. Like, no one's going to benefit from the understanding that feelings are feminine. And I feel the same way too about, like, fashion and painting nails and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not inherently gendered. And by making them that way, it creates a large boundary between somebody and their desire to express themselves. It's like women probably get the most freedom to do this. It's like I can wear pants and a t-shirt and it's fine. But if a guy wears short shorts or a dress or a skirt, it's a problem. And you're calling into question his masculinity. Where no one's going to call into question my femininity if I'm wearing baggy shorts and a massive t-shirt. Because I've got a pretty face. So people are going to be like, oh, hot chick dressed like a dude. It's great. You look great. Whereas if a guy, no matter how attractive he is, wears a skirt or a dress, it's like, oh, what's your issue? Like, what's this? What's going on? And that's not fair. Like, shit. If my boyfriend texted me and he was like, hey, yo, I want to wear a dress, I'd be like, okay, you want help with your size? Like, you need help with that? Because it's like, who am I to step in and say, I don't want you expressing yourself? That's not my place. My place is to be supportive and loving and understanding and compassionate. Because, you know, as a partner, that's your job, is to be there for them no matter what they want to do. So
We like to categorize ourselves, you know, like we like to put ourselves into these fucking little pockets. Like you can even draw comparisons into the nationalities, right? And fucking country borders. I mean, what is that? It's an imaginary line in the sand separating two people that were born on the same fucking soil. Like it doesn't make any sense. So then being able to convert that over to like gender, like what does it mean? Like blue is fucking male. Like what does that mean? Like it to me it doesn't make any sense. Like if you go, okay, what category are we? Well, we're human. Okay. So if I was going to be a fucking human being, what would that mean? And I think this is where spirituality has really helped me in these conversations, because back home growing up, I can remember it's a very toxic place in the sense of like, you know, you got to be fucking manly men and blah, blah, blah. We fight all the time and everything's aggression. Like no matter what question is, the answer is fucking fight, no matter what. So you're just like, I don't want to be like that anymore, because, you know, you destroy more things than you actually create. And inevitably you will destroy yourself as well as everyone else around you. And I don't want to be that guy. So you look through the spirituality and you go, okay, male and female energy, right? Masculine and feminine energy. I'm like, well, I'm a human being. So wouldn't that mean I need both?
true.
Just throwing that one out there. So you're like, okay, so I need time to be able to sit down and process things, blah, blah, blah. And again, I think I'm a writer, right? And a fucking poet, published poet, technically, which is really weird for me to say, simply because of, you know, the experiences and blah, blah, blah. I'm a guy who likes to lift weights. Okay. I've been fucking, you know, we're in the fitness scene for a long time, but I'll also sit myself down and fucking write my feelings out and put it into a little fucking like combination and stick it on the internet. That's fucking oxymoronic, and people will look at me and be like, oh, that's fucking weird, mate, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, that's the human being. That's the fucking two sides of being human. First of all, I'll go super dark. I'll think of some fucking bullshit that hurt me still as a kid, and I'll go throw snatching above my head or pick it up and then throw it above my head and clean and jerk or back squat or some shit. Cool. And then I'll sit down and be like, well, let's process this and write my feelings out in fucking poetry. And they're like, well, that's the point. Like we go back, like fucking life is a gray area. Like the happy and the sad, like the fucking male and the female, that's fucking human. Like that is the whole point, the combination of the two. I think people need to fucking understand that. And also just be like, hey, you don't like it, fuck you.
Yeah. No, and it's so funny that you say that, because I constantly feel like a walking contradiction, because I've never really subscribed to any sort of like style. Like today I went out with my friend and I wore like a black bralette crop top and black cargo jeans and combat boots with like a chain, and that was my outfit. Whereas like a couple weeks ago, I went out to dinner and like this floral green, like V-cut romper, and I had like these little brown shoes on, like vibes totally different. Not even like existing in the same store, different, you know? But for me, like in those moments, those were accurate representations of how I was feeling and how I wanted to present myself to the world. And very similarly, it's like when I'm in the gym, I do not really look very friendly. I look, this dog bites. Like that's my face. I'm like, if you approach, I will chomp and it will not be great. So please leave me alone. But if you come up to me, despite that, and you're like, oh my God, hi. I'm like, oh my God, hi. Like, who is up? You know, so the face does not match the persona all the time. And I think it's very interesting the way in which we can present ourselves and still be the opposite. Like you can present yourself in the gym as being someone who's strong, who does all these, you know, movements, and then go home and be an emotional person who's able to articulate their feelings in a way that resonates not only with you but with other people as well. It's like two sides of the same coin. People get this idea of singularity where it's like if you're this one thing, then you have to commit to being that one thing. And it's like that's not true though. And that's the beautiful thing about being a human being is that it's like, yes, I love the gym. Powerlifting is like my bread and butter. It's the thing that I would die to do. Like I'm injured right now and it hurts every day, but I still go into the gym and I do what I need to get done in order to get better because the thought of not doing it is worse than the pain to me. But on the flip side, I have a history degree. I'm working on getting into nursing school for a second degree. Like I do a fair amount of writing myself. I do painting, like I play the ukulele, I sing, I did theater in high school. Like we have all these varied interests. And so by believing that you need to subscribe to this one narrative of who you're supposed to be, you deny yourself the capacity to experience the wide variety of things the world has to offer. And that's a shame. It really is, because art and poetry and writing and literature are some of the greatest gifts we've been given. It's the ability to live a million different lives and see into a billion different worlds. And, you know, to deny that because, oh, why would I read? I'm a power lifter. I don't need reading for power. That's stupid. That's dumb. It doesn't make sense. I've read like 10 books in the past month and a half. Like, I devour that shit. Like, I just can't stop reading. And I'd rather be that way than so focused on the one aspect of my life that I feel like needs to define me, that I deny myself all of those other experiences.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Like if you think back to those books that you read, right, and they're the best ones, are they like one-sided where you pick it up and you'd be like, okay, well, once upon a time there was Prince Charming and he lived happily ever after the end. You'd be like, well, that was a shit book. Like,
true.
You'd be like, where's the sustenance? Where's the fucking meat and veg? You know what I mean? Like, where's something what the hardship and the lesson they need to learn? Where's the character plot and all that type of stuff? Yet and same with movies, right? If we go to a movie and nothing happens, we're like, I want my money back. That was shit. Okay, well, now let's equate it over to life. Like, we want to be able to do everything and hit the nail on the head every single time and just be this one-sided, just perfect, successful figure. And you're just like, wait, hold on a minute. Like, no, like the most interesting stories that we all know and love have these plot twists. The most interesting people that we know and love have these many, many strings to their bow. They're not just a power lifter. They're not just a weightlifter. They're not just somebody that, you know, does a 9 to 5 and is an accountant or something. It's like, no, they fucking sing, they can play the ukulele, like just these crazy little things, like, oh, you know, a different language. You're like, that's fucking cool. You know, it's like, why? Because, well, you're experiencing what life has to offer. You're doing everything. There's many, many sides. Like I say this, I wear many masks because the different interactions I have with people will pull out a different version of me simply because They'll need a different version of me. They won't need the coach. They won't need the fucking someone who will sit down and write all the time. They might need something else. So it's like you need many masks to be able to wear. You need many strings to that bow. Like that's personality. That's a person. That's fucking a human being.
I feel like too the downside of that, and something that like I've personally dealt with, is that when you live in a world where so many people identify themselves by their one major thing, identifying yourself when you have a billion different hobbies that you love, like it becomes a little bit trickier. Because like, yeah, I'm a powerlifter, but I'm also technically a historian. I'm a student. I'm a writer. I'm a reader. I'm a painter. I'm a musician. I'm an actress. Like I'm all these different things. And so when people ask, like, what do you do? It's like, well, that's a tricky question. We could be here all day talking about all the different things that I like to do.
That's the same thing. Yeah.
Like I could talk to you for an hour about playing ukulele, and then for another hour about theater. I could talk to you about the fact that I almost went to school in New York City for acting.
Wow.
Like small little parts of your life that people would never guess unless they like sat down and got to know you. But you know what I mean? It's
no
like
how
do you define yourself?
Yeah, and but that's a really good point. Why do we need that definition?
Labels make things easier.
They do, but like I don't know, man. Like, you know, I'll get the question, what do you do for a living? I do a few things. Okay. Like, what's your story? For like I could talk to you for fucking 30 years telling you fucking stories. I'm like, what do you want to know? Like, well, what are you? I was like, human. Okay. What else? Well, I'm male. And I just usually say I'm Northern, you know, I'm Mac. You know, I'm from Manchester, I'm Mac, you know, like that's kind of the label I'll put on. Because if you go straight down into those labels, those definitions that people want, you miss out everything else. And it's like, well, yeah, that might be a role that I'll adopt and a title that I'll do, and the same on your side, but that just misses out all the interesting parts or most of the interesting parts of you, and that doesn't do yourself credit.
I agree.
So it's like, well, what, you know, why do we need it? No one likes someone who's vanilla, right? We don't hang around with people that are just super like bland all the time, because you're like, holy shit, dude, like, can you like, you know, crack a joke, be sarcastic, or do something, you know?
Yes. No, I 100% agree with that. It's just the world that we live in now is so interested in these neat fine lines that when you have a label to give yourself, it gives you a box to be placed in, so people can easily understand and digest the kind of person you are.
Fuck the box.
So they look for boxes, I think, not as a way to necessarily simplify the person, but to simplify the process and believing they know somebody.
Well, no one will ever truly know you because they're not with you through everything.
This is true.
No one's been with you throughout the whole experience.
Simultaneously the loneliest thought and the most freeing one.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's imbalanced, right? It's oxymoronic. That's life.
Yeah, because it's like no one's ever gonna understand you, which means no one can ever tell you who the fuck you are.
Exactly. Like,
mic drop.
Boom.
Good chow. That's it. That's it. That's my little golden nugget.
That's beautiful.
That's my wisdom. When I go to the grave, that's what I want on my tombstone.
Oh, that's stunning. Yeah. Yeah, fuck. I hear people complain about opinions, right? Or like offer their opinions all the time, and it's really strong. I'm like, oh, no, you can't do that, blah, blah. I was like, okay, let me just stop you there. If you have the right to give your opinion on something that I do, I also have the right to not give a fuck.
Completely valid.
So it's like, I appreciate that opinion, but I don't give a fuck. See you later. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do.
Yeah. And so I would 100% agree with that. Although there is a line that I draw there, because it's like, on one hand, yes. On the other hand, if you're doing something that's not great and someone tells you, and it's like, I don't give a fuck, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Well, it's like, well, You know what I mean?
I've been
So my philosophy, the way that I kind of approach the world when it comes to things like that, is that so long as it is not causing anybody else harm or impacting anybody else in a negative way, you can do whatever the fuck you want with your life. It's not my business. I don't care. Like in American politics, I fall under the libertarian category, which is very much like do whatever you want. I don't want government involved. Like I don't want anyone's opinion. So long as no one is dying and no one is in danger, it doesn't matter. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry.
My mom just came to bring me my shoes.
That's all right. She can say hello if she wants.
She's
or
like,
I'll say hello.
Here. And I was like, okay.
We had
now I have shoes.
I had a pizza delivery guy on the podcast the other week. It was fucking fantastic. Like
Really?
I was just churning away, and then the lad ordered some pizza, and he was like, "Oh fuck, I'm gonna get the pizza guy in," and just turned the camera. I was like, "This is fantastic. Like this is exactly what I wanted. You know, just a fucking conversation. This is not. It should be called the informal podcast. You know what I mean?"
Yeah. No, I feel that. I feel like we've talked very little about lifting, which I'm honestly not even mad about.
It is what it is. Like this is the thing. Like this shit started because I used to work 4 jobs back home, right? And I would get home dead late, and I'd always drive in like my sleep deprived state, and I'd put the world to rights. You know, as you do, you just talk to yourself because I'm a lunatic. You know, all the interesting people are lunatics. To an extent though.
Reasonably crazy.
Yes. And I was like, you know what? Fuck. Like, I should actually record this because people might be able to take some nuggets out of it. But then my whole introverted, nervous state kind of kicks in, and I kind of, sit on it for a couple of years. Anyway, fast forward, I picked the mic up, and I was like, look, if I start talking to people, I don't want this fucking 21 question bullshit where I'm like, all right, sit down, I'm an interviewer, blah, blah, blah. Who the fuck am I to do that? Like, I'm just some dude from a northern part of the world who chats with a lot of swear words thrown in there because that's my culture, and I do what I do. And I fucking know shit. You know what I mean? Like, I want to learn from you guys and just have a decent conversation and build a connection with people. You know, like that's what I found, like in a world that we're so connected, we feel so alone, which is actually a line from one of my poems. That's a shameless plug. But it's true though, right? We all fucking feel lonely, and loneliness is only apparent when we're in a crowd and we feel like we can't connect with others. And it's just like, look, man, like if we fucking, give each other our time and fucking talk about coffee and how we drink coffee, then we talk about coffee. If we talk about politics, we talk about politics. I probably would stop you if we talk about politics. I don't really care. But you know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is. The conversation goes where it goes, and I fucking appreciate your time for it.
I appreciate you having me. I love any opportunity to talk, and honestly, like it's kind of refreshing to not talk about powerlifting because everyone, like the questions are always the same. It's like, how did you get started? What's your inspiration? What keeps you going? What keeps me going is spite, hatred. I'm motivated by anger. I'm small, but I'm full of rage. Like, I scream and shout and shake the shit out of the bar when I approach it, not because I'm a happy person. I'm a very angry person. But it's like small doses of anger, small doses, executed in a timely manner. But, it's refreshing to talk about the things that occupy my mind outside of the gym.
Oh, that's why we work out, right? Is to be able to fucking release it for a little bit so then we can go outside the gym and we're a nicer person, to your fucking partner, to your family, to all this. Like, you're just a little bit more sane. Like that's why we train, and I mean, fuck, like people are gonna know you're a fucking badass underneath the barbell. Like, we don't need to beat that drum until until it's absolutely blue in the face. You know, it's like, look, yeah, she lifts some weights, like she's hardcore. Right, cool. Do you want to actually know anything more else, or are we just gonna scratch the surface on the superficial shit?
True. It's like, yeah, let's talk about the fact that when we die, I think there's nothing.
Do you think that?
I don't know. I'm gonna be completely honest. I used to genuinely believe in the afterlife, and now I'm like, I don't know. I hope there's something, because that'd be cool. But if there's not, it's not like I'm gonna be conscious enough to be aware that there's nothing. So regardless, I guess I win unless I end up in hell. And then in that case, well, that's not great, but I guess I'll deal with it.
Maybe we're already in
Nothing
it.
I can do about it now.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Like, maybe we're already in it. Maybe we're in purgatory. Maybe we're in hell right now. Who knows?
Look, I believe it. If someone, like, The Good Place?
Yes. Fucking yes.
If someone came up to me and they're like, yo, dog, this is the bad place, I'd be like, that makes sense.
Totally.
That actually makes sense. I believe it. I'd have zeroed out in my mind. I'd be like, all right, shit, okay. But I mean, for the bad place, it's got some pretty good perks. So if hell is like this, I can't say I'll be mad.
And that's the thing. Like, it's all an assumption. No one knows.
No one knows.
Everything's a theory.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Fuck, who are we to know? We're not, if anyone's going to know, it's going to be a figure like Stephen Hawking, Like, well, why the fuck should we know? So let's just live your life as best as you can in whatever moral you think is right, and fucking that's it, man. Enjoy the ride.
Why torture yourself with all these questions about what comes after so much that you miss what's happening now? Like, why do that?
That's some Kung Fu Panda wisdom right there.
I love Kung Fu Panda. Underrated film, cinematic masterpiece, in my opinion. Great movie. I watched it the other day for the first time in a very long time, and I was like, I forgot how funny this is.
It's fantastic.
Like, even as a grown woman, I'm like, this shit's hilarious. Although I don't know if that says that it's funny to adults or if I have the maturity level of an 8-year-old. Both of which are viable options.
No comment.
I'll take that.
All right. No, I mean, fuck, I love that movie. I'm definitely watching that tonight.
Do it.
100%. 100%.
Highly recommend.
Mate, I fucking appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the conversation, for your perspective on things. It's really refreshing to be able to speak to someone with, well, some depth. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to have fucking decent conversations. And I always feel really blessed to have conversations like that. Like I said, I'm just a fucking working class dude from somewhere in the north. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you for having me. It means a lot that you reached out and, thought that I would be interesting to talk to for a little bit. So thank you a lot for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it. Like, I find more often than not people that are so invested in the barbell, whether it is whatever strength sport, strong man, strong woman, powerlifting, weightlifting, whatever the fuck it is, even CrossFit to an extent, is like there's so much more depth to those individuals. And I'm like, look, man, let's get out of the gym. Let's sit down. Let's fucking share a coffee. And let's, well, not share a coffee. No one touches my coffee. But let's just fucking chat some shit and realize that, hey, you think you're alone in this boat and this boat is sinking, but there's many other people sat there with you. There's many other people sat in a dark room, and sometimes it's not lonely. Yeah, I agree. What a legend. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye. Bye.